All right, we are back again, and this time we're going to get into making some changes to some of the materials and basically changing the overall appearance of our character. Some really helpful tips, tricks, and stuff to do that. So, getting right into it, we're going to come back in here into our example character once more. So the quickest, easiest way to modify a material is basically we're going to take and we're going to look at, first of all, we got to find the material we want to modify. The simplest way to do that, so we'll start with the torso. So we've already got that selected. As we come down here to the material elements. Now, so in this case, the actual shirt is the top, and then we've got the skin material as well that sits underneath that. We're going to leave the skin material for now. I'm going to go into that when we get into the face and setting that up, making some changes there. But for now, we're going to go into the top. Now, I like to leave the base material just as it is for reference. It's easy. It's there. Just leave it. So what we're going to do is we're going to browse to it, click this little folder icon. And it's going to find that in the content browser. Okay. We'll right click on that, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit duplicate. And we'll do, for the name, I'll name it Kira Top Custom. And it just helps to give it a name or something that you can find later on easily by searching it and referencing it if you need it to. But it also helps to keep it in here with all the other materials, so it's all in one place. You know where to look if for whatever reason you can't find it later on. You kind of know where to come back to. But we'll take that and we're going to drag it and we're going to drop it right here. So you see now it says Kira Top Custom. We haven't changed it yet, so it's going to look the exact same. But now if we double click this and we open it, so now we're in the material, okay? And a couple things you can do if you're pressed for time, you know, you want to just quickly modify it. You can just open these up, and you're gonna have all the masks, all the diffuse textures, all that good stuff. I like to. It takes a little longer, but setting the preview mesh helps. That way, you can actually see what it's going to look like kind of on the mesh without having to go back and forth and constantly reference it. So we've got the mesh loaded in here. So we've got the cloth colors. Now, for the Exandria characters, I find it's a little inconsistent with what, you know, color A, color B, color C actually controls. Sometimes, you know, the main color is actually C. Sometimes the main color is actually A. And they do different things, and certain outfits, especially like on the fantasy characters, the magic characters, that sort of thing. There's different groups, so you can kind of tweak and adjust different aspects of the outfit. It's not always just one singular color. In the case of this shirt, it's all going to be just one singular color that we can modify. But on some different ones, you know, you can change that. But this is where you do that. So we'll start on cloth color A and see if that's the correct one. Okay, so on this outfit, that is the correct one to pick for the main color. Now, the end goal is going to be kind of a springtime theme, so we're going to go for a little bit more of a lighter, sort of a pastel color. The ground's going to be green, so we don't want to do anything that's going to clash with that too much. So maybe we can go for, like, I kind of like this light blue, you know, that looks good. Maybe a little bit darker, and we'll do that there. Now, we'll click OK and we'll store that. We're going to reopen that color because it's already set. And then down here you have color themes. If you don't know about these, you should, because they help a lot. But we'll create a new theme, and we'll call it example color plate for our example character. So, and it of course did not save that, so we're going to go ahead and we'll rename that. There we go. Perfect. Okay, and then we're just going to take and we'll click on that, and it's going to add it to that save theme, so that way later on we can reference that color. So now we'll click OK, and we'll click Save. And one thing I do recommend as soon as you're done with these is closing them right away. Having multiple materials open tends to cause issues with Unreal lagging. It's going to take up a lot more RAM, so that's not good. But so now you can see our custom color's been applied. We come here into the viewport, and there it is. So now our shirt is blue, so that's very nice. Next thing we'll want to do is we're just going to set this up for all of the clothing. So we're going to do the same thing. So we'll go to the skirt, and we'll duplicate that, and again, just give it a special name, something you can find. Same thing, we'll drag and drop. And then we're going to open that up. And for the skirt, and again, let's set that so we can kind of see here. Skirt Kira, perfect. Okay. So we've got the mesh right here. And again, A, B, and C, you don't really know which one it is till you start playing with it. Usually if it's just one color, it's usually A, so you don't have to worry too much about it. And on most of the clothing, you don't need to worry about the masks and the diffuse textures and stuff. But for the facial customization, these become very important very fast. For now, we're just working on this. Let's give this, let's go to kind of a nice brown. I think would look best with the blue. Perfect. It's like a nice chocolate color. And it's funny because looking at it, that doesn't really look like it would be a brown, but it appears brown. So just drag this around, play with it. You know, it's not always, if I plug in an RGB that's supposed to be exactly brown, it may not look exactly brown. So just kind of play around till you find a color that you like. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll click OK, and we'll store that as a color option. And we'll click Save, and let's just check on our character. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's been applied to our character. That's great. Same thing, and then for the boots, we'll make the boots just, I think, maybe a nice, kind of a basic black would look fine. So same thing. Click on the boots, casual boots, and we'll duplicate that. Okay, casual boots custom, perfect, same thing, drag that in, open that up, and we'll search for the boots. In this case, it's the Naomi, I believe, yes. Okay, so we've got our boots here. Now on this one, actually, there might be a couple different things you can play with. So you can see here we've got the zippers on the back and stuff like that we can modify. So cloth color A, we'll see hopefully that is, okay, so in this case, color A is not controlling the main color. So if you see, if I click OK, what has changed? Not a ton. And that's fine. So what we'll do is we'll just disable that because we don't need it. So we'll go color B. And color B also is not changing anything. And you'll find that happens a lot sometimes on different things because the same texture, or in this case a material, might be getting used across multiple different meshes. So there might be another set of boots that is referencing this same material. And it may not do anything on this one, but on that other set, the B and C may be changing things. But for now, we don't need those either. So color C. So there we go. There's our main color. And like I said, we'll just do like a kind of a more basic black. I want to go too pitch black. We'll make them just like a nice dark color here. And you can give them a little hue if you want. Up to you. But I think that looks good. I don't want, you know, pitch black. I want it to still kind of look like leather, you know. So that's fine. So we'll save that. So we've got that. And then the same thing, we'll add that to our palette. And that way it's saved if we ever want to change anything. And now we'll go back and let's take a look on our character and see how that looks. I think that looks fine. So we'll keep that how it is. So next up, we'll do the main body skin tone. And that is going to be important to save because you want that to match. So we're going to go back in here. Same thing. We'll click on this. And it doesn't matter where you click on. You just want to make sure they're all set to the same thing. So the facial skin texture is actually going to be a little different. But you'll see here in the body there is still a texture there for the body texture. And these are all going to be the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to find this. We're going to go to the same thing. And we're going to go ahead and duplicate that again. And we'll do body, skin, custom. And then we're going to want to take this and we're going to want to replace that on everything that is going to have that skin texture in there. So in this case, for now, it's just the legs. We'll do that for the hands as well. And then we'll do that on the face. And that's anywhere that the body's getting referenced. So there's that. And so in this case, on this character, that's going to pretty much be it. You may have it underneath a mesh like that. Just make sure you set it on all of them so it matches throughout. But yeah, so now what we're going to go ahead and do, and what I find for the body is we open that up. You want to try to find a mesh that has good amount of skin texture showing. So we'll say torso. Let's do a bikini one. That should be fine. There's that is there. Perfect. Now what we're going to want to do is underneath here, so you have the artist delights, you have the base color, skin color, that sort of stuff, normal, roughness, scattering, specular. Now what you don't really need to worry about too much is, in this case, we can close specular, scattering. That's a little bit more advanced stuff. We're just kind of going into sort of some of the basics of it. First things first is we'll go ahead and we'll set the skin color and the body color. So on a skin color, generally you don't want to go extreme. Oh, that's funny. It's actually displaying that on the completely wrong part of the mesh. So let's actually go ahead and we'll change that. Okay, so we got that figured out. For some reason, it was not wanting to display on the skin, but we got that figured out. That's fine. All that was happening apparently was it wasn't referencing it correctly. So a quick little close and reopen, and that's fine. It's a little Unreal issue there. But anyway, so we've got this skin color here. So like I said, you don't want to go anything too crazy. Obviously, I mean, you can if you'd like to have, you know, kind of an alien character or something like that. But generally, you want to keep it quite, for human characters anyways, quite close to white. And just a slight change. I mean, you can see here, I'm still mostly on the white, but you can really see kind of how easily that's going to change the skin tone. So what I find works best is kind of a little bit, if you want a little bit more of a tan skin, just a little bit more into the red yellow, I think for me personally looks the best. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and then we'll go ahead and we'll add that. And then so you can see here just that little bit of saturation to it changes it quite a bit. And you can crank it, you know, play with the values on it however much you want, you know. I think something like that probably for me looks the best, so we'll actually go ahead and we'll add that in so it's a little bit less pale. And then we'll click OK, and that's fine, and that's done. So we'll go ahead and we'll close these, and we'll save that, and we'll go ahead and we'll close that again. So now that's going to be set on the hands and on the legs. And then one thing you want to do, just check it, because it can look a little different, you know, between the actual blueprint and in-game. I think that looks really nice. I think that looks great. Just a little bit more color. And then finally, what we're going to do is the facial texture. This is quite complicated. There's a lot that goes into this. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, and we're going to get, same thing, find that facial texture. We'll browse to that, and we'll duplicate and same thing, rename it. Perfect. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll drag that in here. And on for the Exandra characters, your eye and your face are going to be two separate textures. So just keep that in mind. The eye has tons of its own different things you can modify and adjust in there. We'll do some of the basic ones like color, you know, pupil size, that sort of thing. But you can play around with that for hours on its own. For now, though, into the facial texture itself, we'll come down here, and we're going to go ahead and we'll do the facial skeletal mesh, or the head, sorry, excuse me. And we'll come up here. So we've got this applied. And we'll get in kind of close here. Perfect. Okay. So, same thing with the body skin. Actually, if I jump back in here and I open this back up, a couple values, and some of it you're going to want to make sure absolutely matches. The main things you want to have match are the roughness value and the skin tone value, obviously. What roughness is going to do is it's going to basically adjust how much the skin kind of glows, or I guess would appear sweaty, or like how reflective the skin is. So we've got min and max values here, and then we've got global values, okay? So if I adjust these values here, so if you see, if I start cranking the roughness up, it loses the shine until it gets just where there's none. Or, you know, if I lower it, for example, down to like 0.1, it gets very reflective and very shiny. So just play around with that value. Find the one that you like, you know, kind of works the best. For me, I'm going to say probably a value of like 1 typically looks the best. Gives you a little bit of reflection, but not too much. But that's totally up to you. You know, it's whatever you prefer to have in there. But we'll save that. Just make sure that the global roughness matches both the face and on the body, so it appears correctly. So we'll come in here, and same thing, global roughness. We set it to 1, so we'll set it to 1 here as well. Perfect. Okay, so what you'll find is in here, there are a lot of things you can control. So we've come down here, we've set everything up to match the rest of our skin on the roughness, global roughness at 1.0. So some things you'll find is when you are migrating multiple character packs and stuff into your project, sometimes references and things can get a little bit busted. So one example of that. So if and this is just a start, I'm going to go through each one of these kind of individually and walk you through, you know, how to set these up and things like that. But if I come here to the freckles, for example, if I take all these off, there's still freckles there. Why is that happening? Well, if I come down here, and one thing you always want to check, you know, take a note of what's in the slot before you reset it, but just go in and reset to the default value. And then now, you know, for example, if there's an arrow here, that means something's gotten changed, right? So when you're in here looking at things, if something's not working or not acting correctly, a lot of the times it's because of one of the masks here. But now if I click off on the freckles, you can see there's next to none. So that is working correctly now. If I go here and I go to 0 on that, cool, click on that and we'll save. Perfect. Now there's no freckles at all, so that's what we want to have happen. So just be wary of those, you know. But yeah, so you can kind of play around, do what you want here. Color, we'll have a little bit. Let's do a few little freckles here and there. Let's do a little more red on them. Perfect. Okay, and skin color, we'll make sure that matches the last one we did on the other one. Perfect. And then what we can do, we'll crank up the freckles a bit more. Perfect. I kind of like where that's at. And it's kind of interesting, you know, obviously a lot of times this doesn't look that great in here, but when you play around with it enough and you start translating it onto like what's in the actual viewport versus what's in the material editor, you kind of learn like what values look good and what values don't look good. So right now I think that looks pretty good. Not a fan of the eyes, but you know, we're going to fix that. We'll tweak those a little bit here in a second. But we're going to keep going. I'm going to go through each one of these with you here. So the eye makeup, you can kind of generally leave that alone. You know, if you want to reset these, you can, you know, there's a bunch of different ones in here you can play with. Blush amount, blush color, you know, I can crank that up if I'd like to. You know, I generally find like a value, somewhere like a value of 1 is generally pretty good for that. Make sure the masks and all that, there's a few different ones. For these ones, the eyeliner, there's really just a few you can kind of choose from. There's not a ton of them yet, but I understand that's kind of getting worked on. Make sure actually that stays the lipstick mask. You have all your color options, everything like that in here. I recommend just kind of play around with them. Set them how you like them. Eye makeup amount, you can kind of change how dramatic. You can see sort of around the eyes. I usually like a value of around 2 just to kind of make it stand out. And then you can obviously change the colors and stuff too. And then just like I showed you on the other one, you know, with the boots and stuff like that, it may not always control what you're thinking it's going to control. So just play around with it. But I generally think black, you know, is going to look good. Scattering and stuff like that, that's just going to kind of adjust. It's really, really subtle, but how kind of full the makeup is. If you go to too crazy on the value, you start to get artifacting. So, you know, you can kind of leave that alone for the most part. We've got the freckles and all that. I already touched on that. Lip color, we can go a little bit darker. I think would look good on the lipstick. And then same thing with the lipstick scattering. You can also do the amount, so you can do how much you want or how little you want, you know, based on for the lipstick there. So something like that looks okay. And we can leave it like that, and we'll go ahead and we'll save that. And then we'll come back and let's just check it out on the character. I think that looks pretty good. All that's really left to do is going to be the eyes. Actually, we'll brighten that lipstick just a little bit. It's a little too dark. And it's just something you're going to have to play with, you know, like I said. Oh, I did that on the wrong one there. Lip color. A little brighter. Then once you've got everything how you like it, like I said, remember to save everything so you can reference it later on. Perfect. That looks much better. And then last but not least, we'll go in and we'll edit the eyes. So same thing here. And we'll drag that in, and we'll open that up. Now in this case, the default sphere is actually pretty good to use for the static mesh that's going to be in there. So you can kind of just leave that alone. You don't really need to set it up that much for the eye. But what we'll do is you want to go ahead and just start setting some colors, you know, however you like them. I'm a fan. Let's do some light blue eyes. And then I actually, sometimes I like to taper them a little bit darker actually on the edges. That probably is going to be too much, but let's see how that looks in the editor. Let's go ahead and apply and save that. And then that should be there, and you can kind of play with it, just see how you like how it looks. So that in this case, I think that's probably a little bit too dark on the edges. So we'll go ahead and we'll brighten that up a bit, so it's a little bit closer to the other color. Maybe something like that. It's a little bit too much, and so this is just something you kind of have to play with. We can go a little lighter on it too. See how that looks. I think that looks pretty nice. So you can kind of just play around with it, but that's it on the eyes. If you want to kind of give the eyes a little bit different looks to them, you can do that. All these settings down here, you can play with it. So like the iris radius, you can kind of set how wide you want the eye to be. So if I do like 1.0 there, that's fine. Pupil, how big do I want the pupil to be? Sometimes it doesn't update right away, so if it doesn't look like anything's changing like that, you know, just kind of tweak it and then, you know, press enter and just kind of do it incrementally. You know, you can do that. I think that looks pretty good. So we can leave that as is, you know, and just play around with it. Obviously, if it's a character you're going to use in your game or in renders or something like that, you want it to look good. And for the case of this tutorial, I'm not going to spend, you know, hours going over every little thing for you guys, but you get the kind of the basic idea. That's where you find things. That's where you make tweaks. And then last but not least, I'll go into... So we're done with the head and the skin and all that. So we're going to go ahead and we'll save this. And then we'll get into the hair, and that'll be the last thing we're going to touch on for this part of the tutorial. So for the hair, it helps if, so in this case, you're both the bangs and the hair. That's great. We've got the same exact hair material in here, so that's perfect. So we're going to go in here to the V7, and we'll duplicate that. Give it a custom name, and same thing, hair custom. And you can have these separate. You know, you can always have a separate, you know, hair, bangs, whatever, if you want to, you know, have it dyed differently, things like that. That's totally fine. But we're going to go ahead and we'll open this up. And then same thing. And this one, again, you do want to actually set the preview mesh. So we'll go, what hair are we using here? Maddie. Okay, so we'll go in here and we'll set it to hair Maddie. Perfect. Okay. A couple values on the hair. Okay, if you're using these characters, what you'll want to look at is the edge mask a lot of the times. That's going to control more or less how thick the hair is. So if you like reset those to just their default values, usually that's fine, you know. But if you go too crazy low on it, you'll see the hair kind of starts disappearing and thinning out. If you go too high, you get a lot of the kind of black artifacting in there. So play around with it, specifically on like a lot of the bob hairstyles and stuff like that. If they look kind of thin, that's why. It's the edge masks. For these other ones, you have the hair highlight multiplier. metalness, roughness, you can usually kind of leave those alone. Just kind of controls how shiny the hair is, basically. Um, and then root darken is for like the root of the hair, how much you want that to be darkened, or if at all, you know. So you can kind of see the difference there. I usually like to not have the root be darkened too much. The 1.0 is fine. I usually leave that alone. But if we go into the base color here, we'll make a few little changes. So we'll do a nice red. We'll see how that looks. That might not look good with the blue shirt, but we'll take a look here. And then for the highlight color, you can kind of set it again whatever you like. So we've got the hair, we've got the highlight. Just to show you, I'm going to set the highlight to something totally different so you can see what I'm actually controlling here. But you got the main highlight color. So if we come back up here, you got the highlight amount and the highlight multiplier, okay? So what the amount is going to do is it's going to change basically how much of the hair is highlights and how much is the standard color. And then the multiplier is going to affect kind of how far up, how far down. They both kind of do the same thing, but essentially different volumes. So just play with it. Find a value you like between the two, and something that balances well for you. I'm going to go back down here, and I'm actually going to set this to something a little more similar to the color that I have. So maybe something like that with a little bit of blonde in it. No, not quite blonde, a little more orange, but we'll save that for now. And we'll take a look and let's see how that looks in game. I think that looks pretty nice. And again, you can play with it. You know, it's all subjective, whatever you'd like. But for the purposes of just showing you how that works, I think we'll leave that for now. I think that looks pretty good. And so this is the character we will use for our upcoming renders. So we're going to go ahead and we'll save everything. Make sure that's all there. And the next stop, what we're going to do is we're going to start getting into actually doing some control rig stuff, posing, how all that works. So I will see you guys for that here in just a minute.